Manchester City's Kevin De Bruyne has been talking about the possibility of leaving the club if the impending Champions League ban isn't lifted. Here's what he had to say, quote, "Once there's a final decision, I will look at it. 2 years without Champions League football would be long. 1 year is something I might be able to cope with." Gab Marcotti still with us. Craig Burley joins the show as well. Craig, what do you make of what Kevin De Bruyne has to say here? No Champions League football might mean an exit at City.
Well, it might mean an exit at City if the club allow him that exit. Kevin De Bruyne is on a long-term big money contract there, and rightly so. However, it may be laughable to throw out the word loyalty there out here in the spectrum, because there is really no loyalty in most sports these days, and that goes all the way to the top. Look, it's understandable players may be concerned about the situation. We don't know what's going to happen. But there are things out there to win for Manchester City if the worst-case scenario comes to the fore. You know, they've been toppled at the moment by Liverpool domestically. There's cup competitions in England. There's a Euros in 2021 for Belgium. There's a World Cup in 2022. So the Champions League is important. Of course it is. But it is not the be-all and end-all. And I think Manchester City, and particularly the hierarchy, will be looking for, and I say inverted commas, some sort of loyalty from these players, bearing in mind the remuneration that they get paid. And, you know, I think they would be disappointed if players would look for an exit. But I think ultimately that's maybe what some players, Sebi, will try and do.
Gab, you got to think that clubs around Europe would be lining up to sign a player like Kevin De Bruyne. What could be some realistic suitors?
You know, I look at this a little bit differently. I look at this as the fact that Kevin De Bruyne turns 29 years old in June. I look at the fact that obviously he had a really bad injury a season ago, which caused him to miss most of the season. He's on an absolutely enormous contract, one of the highest, I think one of the top 3 or 4 highest paid players in the Premier League. And, you know, this might seem sort of perverse, but I think if you're Begiristain, you're saying, you know what, or if you're Man City, maybe if we have to have 2 years without Champions League revenues, we've got a guy who's making an absolute ton of money. So it's very difficult to sell him because few clubs can afford him. You know, maybe if he floats that possibility, maybe we get an offer. Maybe it's not the end of the world. You know, maybe Bernardo Silva and Gundogan and Phil Foden or whatever. You know, David Silva potentially leaving as well. His contract obviously is up. You know, maybe it could almost be a blessing in disguise. Let's plant the idea and see what goes out there. I don't have any kind of issue with this. I wouldn't see De Bruyne being disloyal. He's at that age and that contract where, you know, he's a huge contributor, but if you have somebody take him off your hands and obviously you get a sizable amount of money back, and that is a big if given the current situation, maybe I don't think it's the end of the world at all for City.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN Plus.